Where's Cinderpaw? Fireheart meowed. Brackenpaw lifted his head sleepily. What? Cinderpaw, where is she? Don't know, Brackenpaw answered, confused. Fireheart withdrew his head and looked around the clearing. Frostfur was pacing outside Bluestar's den, her coat ruffled with agitation. Fireheart wondered what to do. He didn't have time to find Cinderpaw himself, and he didn't want to tell the other warriors that she was missing. Graystripe, he thought, suddenly. Graystripe could look for her while he went to find Tigerclaw. Fireheart hurried to the warrior's den and slipped inside. Graystripe's nest was empty. A flash of anger shot through Fireheart. Where was his friend when he needed him? As if he couldn't guess, Fireheart snorted crossly. Cinderpaw would have to fend for herself until he had found Tigerclaw and told him Bluestar was sick. Fireheart raced back through the gorse tunnel and began the journey to the Thunderpath. As he followed the trail up the side of the ravine and into the woods, he was aware that Cinderpaw's scent hung in the air. She must have come this way. Of course! She had gone to meet Tigerclaw herself! The fur on Fireheart's spine prickled with worry and frustration. How could she be so foolish? As he skirted Snake Rocks, Fireheart began to smell the Thunderpath and hear the roar of its monsters. Suddenly, a shrill, high-pitched squeal sounded from the edge of the trees. Fireheart felt the blood run cold in his veins. It was the same cry he had heard in his dream. Hi, my name is Spencer Grant, but you may know me as Spencer I'm trying to think of something else that you might know me as, but honestly it's probably just going to be Spencer Grant. I haven't changed my online screen name for like a really long time. I used to be ibuprofen with a PH because that was like my rap name. And before that, I had like a whole slew of Homestuck inspired names. Which I think and I used to be Graystripe or Greenstripe on the Warrior Cats forums. Some of you may know me as that. And if you do know me as that, hi! It's good to hear from you again. Send me a message. Let's catch up. Anyways, this is Fourtrees. It's a Warriors Cats podcast, retrospective podcast, of course. And today I'm going to be talking about Warrior Cats book episode 2, Fire and Ice. I'm going to be real with you guys. I don't really understand the title of this book. Like, I see where the ice is coming from. This takes place during the winter for the most part, and obviously there's the incident where Graystripe falls through the ice and, there's ice all over the place and it's snowy. Like, that I get. But the fire, I simply do not understand. I'm sorry. Like, they keep coming back to this prophecy that just doesn't make any sense. Fire alone will save the clans. It doesn't make sense. Fire is the enemy of all of the cats. It destroys the forest. I still do not understand where it's coming from. And at this point, I'm starting to wonder if Spotted Leaf might have been like, I don't know, eaten too many poppy seeds, if you know what I mean. Not saying that the medicine cats obviously get high on their own supply. I'm just saying that, I get a little bit too silly whenever I have too much melatonin. So, maybe she had, a similar thing going on when she was thinking of that prophecy. I do kind of like the idea of Spotted Leaf being, a Warrior Cats version of a Rastafarian. But I also don't know who the Warrior Cats version of Haley Selassie would be. And if Spotted Leaf would be really the kind to view him as the second coming of the Christ, or if she would be in more of the camp of being like, oh yeah, he was just like a regular god. It has nothing to do with Christianity. I just, my point is, I still don't understand the title of this book. And I'm starting to wonder if this whole fire alone will save the clans thing is making any sense at all. And granted, there were some prophecies that like did definitely come true. The whole like beware a warrior that you cannot trust. Obviously, that was a misdirect. It was meant towards Tiger Claw, but we thought that it was Graystripe because Graystripe's whole like thing for this book was that he was in love with another warrior. Actually, all right. Let's talk about the plot of this book real quick, just so that we can get that out of the way and start talking about the more intricate details. So basically, it picks up immediately after the events of the last book. After standing vigil for the night, Fireheart and Graystripe get acclimated to their new lives as warriors. Fireheart, in particular, takes note of the sacred duty of training an apprentice, and he's like, man, I really wish I could do that. It feels like it would be such a cool thing. He also finally catches Blue Star alone and tells her about Ravenpaw's fate and Tiger Claw's betrayal. And Blue Star is like, whoa, hold on, that's my deputy you're talking about, and you are just a kitty pet. She doesn't say the just a kitty pet part, but it is implied. Like, he is a new warrior. Maybe Ravenpaw was telling jokes, and Firepaw just didn't understand that he was being ironic. So Fireheart is like, okay, whatever, fine, let's talk about this later. And they proceed to the gathering to find that their actions in the last book have paid off, and Broken Star, the formerly evil leader of Shadow Clan, has gone. However, there is trouble in the form of River Clan and Shadow Clan jousting for Wind Clan's territory, and Blue Star sends Fireheart and Graystripe out to bring Wind Clan back now that Broken Star is no longer a threat. Upon finding Wind Clan, they successfully escort them back to their territory, and they encounter Ravenpaw along the way. But they run into some trouble on their way back to ThunderClan as Graystripe accidentally murders White Claw, a River Clan warrior, not the alcoholic drink. Although I kind of like the idea of Graystripe getting really into White Claw. Upon returning, of course, they are duly reprimanded by Blue Star, and then given apprentices for some reason, despite the fact that they did just murder the most popular alcopop beverage in America. But whatever. Fireheart takes his new apprentice, Cinderpaw, out to explore the territory the following day. But when he does so, he encounters a strangely familiar pregnant cat, whom he recognizes eventually as his sister. During one of their training sessions, Graystripe tumbles into the river and is rescued by a cat called Silverstream, and Fireheart later discovers the two are in a relationship. Now this angers Fireheart, especially as Graystripe begins neglecting his warrior duties and spreads a disease that takes away Blue Star's second-to-last life. Fireheart and Graystripe begin fighting, which isolates Fireheart, which feels really bad for him, especially because his apprentice Cinderpaw got hit by a monster that Tiger Claw was talking about. And this drives him even further towards his sister, who he started speaking to, and he starts visiting. He also started spending time with Sandpaw, the older apprentice who was like there in the last book, but he never really got to know her that well, because he was too busy getting to know the clan, and also because she didn't like him. Oh my gosh, wait, sorry. There's, okay, I'm going to interrupt this to talk about a thing that's happening right now. I'm recording this at like 10 a.m. in the morning, and every morning at 10 a.m. there's like an ice cream truck that passes by and plays the A-Team theme for some reason. And I don't know why that is, but if you heard any copyrighted music in the background, that was why. I promise none of the songs in this generally are going to be copyrighted. Maybe I'll like pick some off of Epidemic Sound if I feel like it's too boring just to listen to me talking. But the opening themes and the intermissions are all done by me, so no copyright. It's completely in-house. Anyways, after a nasty fight with Graystripe one day, Fireheart visits his sister to find that she has delivered a kit. And his sister explains that she feels bad about Cinderpaw being crippled, and she wants Fireheart to take in the kit so that he may be a proud, powerful ThunderClan hero that Fireheart can raise as an apprentice. And Fireheart brings the kit back to ThunderClan, and while they're a little bit hostile initially, CloudKit does eventually find a home there. Later on, after tensions rise between the clans of the forest, the exiled Broken Star springs a trap on ThunderClan and attacks their camp while Fireheart is the only warrior there. They manage to successfully fight him and his rogues gallery off, and Yellowfang reveals that she is actually Broken Star's mother after blinding him and taking him prisoner in the camp. Blue Star demotes him to Broken Tail and then orders Fireheart and Graystripe to go on a hunting party together until they get along again, because she has noticed that they are kind of fighting, and she's tired of it. Also, Sandstorm and Dustpelt are promoted to warriors. So after a few more minutes of CloudKit drama, he goes out and hunts for a vole, and everybody's like, "CloudKit, you idiot! You're not supposed to hunt before you're an apprentice, you jerk." WindClan is suddenly attacked by a joint force of ShadowClan and RiverClan. And while ThunderClan jumps in to save the day, Graystripe and Fireheart realize the difficult path that they are now forced to walk. Graystripe, of course, having conflicting loyalties because of his love of Silverstream, and Fireheart because he knows the truth about Tigerclaw. After the battle, the two finally forgive each other and walk back to the ThunderClan camp side by side. And it's adorable, guys. It's really cute. Okay, so there's a lot to talk about in this book. I think the first thing I want to say is that this book is a lot better than I remembered it being. And I feel like that's going to be a sentiment that I start developing the more I get into this. It could just be that these are the earlier books, and so more effort was put into them because there wasn't this feeling that look, anybody who's been with us for the last 60 books is going to read this one. That's just how it works, baby. That's show business. But also, I do feel as though this book does a lot of things that I really appreciate. The earlier plot points with WindClan were really fun to read, and honestly, kind of thrilling in some places, where they were crossing the Thunder Path, and they were basically risking their lives so that WindClan could come back. I thought that was super cool. I loved meeting with Ravenpaw again and getting this perspective of a clan outsider. Especially with Firepaw being initially a clan outsider and finding happiness. I like that there is kind of this sentiment that's being expressed early on in the books that clan life isn't it for all of the cats in the world, and that's okay. Ravenpaw is a lot happier with his boyfriend Barley, and everybody's cool with that. Everybody except for Tigerclaw, I guess, who is basically a fascist. But I mean, we all knew that coming in. I also like how this book tells a complete story. I feel like this happens a lot with modern media, especially in television, which is the field that I work in, where a lot of basically an episode is just kind of a chapter of a story. It's less an episode and more like a chapter. There might be some cohesive elements within the chapter, depending on how big, and important the characters, the showrunners feel like they want it to be. But by and large, when you watch an episode of The Boys, there might be a section of the story that happens, but it isn't self-contained, or it feels more like it's pieces that are moving. It's like you're taking a slice out of a chess game instead of, an entire game of checkers. I'm not doing a good job of explaining this here, but I feel like this book does something that I am unused to seeing in the field of media that I am usually in, and I really appreciate that. You get a very complete story from the events of this book. You get obviously pieces of the clan drama moving forward, but you also get this plot about Fireheart and Graystripe having a tiff because they both have this disagreement over a certain aspect of the warrior code. And this particular aspect is, of course, the plot between Graystripe and Silverstream. It's these two best friends who don't know how to reconcile the fact that one of them is in love, and it's a little bit illegal for him to be in love. And again, the fact that this is, there is a legal love, that we're getting this Romeo and Juliet plotline so early. I know this plotline is done to death in Warrior Cats. That's what I remember. I remember basically every single clan in every single series has at least 3 of these stories go down. And I'm okay with that because I think that it's very funny that these cats are so embroiled in their race wars that they can't even like bother to understand that they're all basically on the same side. And I do feel like there might be some kind of end game. I don't know. Like, again, I'm only 2 books in on my reread, but I feel like the ideal end game for warrior cats would basically be like them uniting. Like, that just kind of makes sense to me. But, you know, again, it's a book for kids. You know, the Hunger Games didn't end with, I don't know, all the people uniting. The Hunger Game, I don't remember how the Hunger Games ended. It's been a long time since I've read those books too. But you know, Hogwarts, you know, you got to have those 4 houses. You know, the good guys, the bad guys, the smart guys, and the guys who are good at finding. And similarly, you know, Warrior Cats also has to have those houses. The good guys, the bad guys, the people who are wet, and the people who are good at running. And I love that too. I love a lot of the things about these books in a beautiful miasma of irony, semi-irony, and sincerity. But anyways, I think that this book does a lot of things well. I think that the drama between Fireheart and Graystripe is really well written. I've had a lot of conflicts with friends that have been in a similar way. I can't say that they've been like the exact same conflicts, obviously, but you know, like this kind of feeling of uncertainty when you're having a falling out with your best friend is pretty relatable, and I think that it resolves in a very strong way at the end. I think that Blue Star continues to be really well written. It makes sense for her not to be quite as open to Fireheart now that he's a warrior and he's not like an outsider coming in and trying to learn everything about the clan. I like that, I like that, you know, Fireheart is taking some time to reconcile his former kitty pet identity. I think that that was a point of the books that I talked about it being skipped over in the first book. Like, it was never really a debate for him about whether he would become a warrior or stay a kitty pet. He basically knew from the second he was attacked by Greypaw that, like, this was the life he wanted to lead. And now we're getting to see some, like, you know, microaggressions in the form of the other cats making fun of him for being a kitty pet, even though he's already proved himself time and time again to be a competent warrior. And so I think that the plot point where he was visiting his sister and eventually, you know, Cloud Kit comes into existence, I think that that was a really well done piece of this. I like the nuance that this starts to give, as, you know, Fireheart is basically starting to, I don't know, he's starting to think about his origins and his role in the clan in an extended capacity that he wasn't thinking about in the first book, probably because they didn't want to write about it. Maybe because, you know, he was a kitten and he didn't think too much about that. But, you know, we'll see. I also think that the introduction of Cloud Kit is interesting. I don't remember much about Cloud Kit, except for that eventually he becomes Cloud Tail. And I don't remember anything about Cloud Tail either. But it makes me wonder, like, if, I don't know, like, obviously the deal with Ravenpaw is that he was born a clan cat and he's happier outside of the structure of the clans. And Firepaw was born an outsider and he's happier in the clans. And it kind of makes me wonder if they're going to treat Cloud Kit the same way, or if there's going to be some more nuance. Maybe Cloud Kit isn't going to be happy inside of the clan. Maybe he'll end up being more like Ravenpaw. Maybe, you know, there will be this kind of struggle once he realizes his kitty pet origins and, you know, he starts getting mad at everybody for being racist against him. I don't know. There's a lot to think about there, and I'm not sure if I'm like the right person to talk about it because, you know, I'm a white person, I'm a straight person, I'm a cis person, I look pretty male. There isn't much for me to be oppressed about, and while I do consume a lot of media that is about race, I feel as though considering that my only experience being an outsider is moving from one country to another country where I am of the same echelon in both, makes me unqualified to talk about whether or not the whole deal with the kitty pet identity is well done. And to what I understand, the Aaron Hunters are largely white women as well. I believe there's 1 or 2 women of color writing under the Aaron Hunter umbrella, but I do not know if they were writing for this particular book. And I also remember that one of the original Aaron Hunters has some pretty bad opinions about trans people. So I don't entirely, I feel like I do to some extent understand enough about this media to talk about these issues, but I don't want to be the only person to talk about it because I might get tunnel vision and I might see things that other people could see clearly. And also that would be basically an entire episode in its own. But what I do want to say is that I appreciate that they are talking about Fireheart's kitty pet identity. From a character perspective, it makes sense for him to start thinking about this now as he finds himself becoming increasingly isolated in the clan now that, he's fighting with Graystripe. From a world building perspective, it makes sense. Obviously you can't just move from one place to another without thinking of your past. When I moved to England, I spent basically the first 3 years incessantly texting my friends back at home. And the only reason I stopped was because I stopped talking to everybody. Like I basically don't talk to my friends anymore during this pandemic because I don't want them to see how insanely unhealthy I've become, at least mentally speaking, due to the pandemic. What does that say about this podcast? I'm not sure. Ha 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 ha. We'll see. I should talk to my friends more. But my point is that this book is interesting, and I'm glad that they're starting to touch on these topics that I was wondering about in the last book. Another thing that I really liked about this book was that I think that the Fireheart and Sandpaw thing was done so much better than the Spotted Leaf thing was done in the last book. For one, they're closer in age. I think that Sandpaw is actually older than Firepaw, to my recollection. And Firepaw was made a warrior before her. So there's a weird social power imbalance there. But it's fine, honestly, because they're so close in age. Sandpaw is basically older than him. It doesn't feel quite as predatory and weird as the Spotted Leaf thing did. And for two, it's less talking about how sweet, her breath smells and how warm they are. And it's more about having these weird glances and, catching each other's eyes and not knowing how to parse their feelings, which I think does make sense for a young romance. And I think this kind of goes back to, I like to interpret Fireheart and Spotted Leaf as being this childhood crush where Firepaw is basically viewing Spotted Leaf through these rose-tinted lenses, and he can't see that Spotted Leaf is actually a warrior cat's Rastafarian who's trying to indoctrinate him into thinking that Haile Selassie is the second coming of Jesus Christ. But obviously, when it comes to Fireheart and Sandpaw, now they're both somewhat, inexperienced, but in a way somewhat more experienced in this realm. And so this romance and this relationship feels a lot more believable to me when I read it, and I appreciate it a lot more. I like that Dustpaw is this purported romantic rival too, even though he basically doesn't hold a candle to Firepaw. I think that that's something that a lot of people can identify with, both in the sense of being in where Dustpaw is, and also in the sense of having other people be mad at you for this relationship that you're starting to develop. I remember when I started developing a relationship with one of my significant others, I had friends who were legitimately mad at me for either the reason that, they wanted, I don't know. It's always complicated when you get into these kinds of things. And with the Warriors clans being these insulated groups with, all of 20 cats, it makes sense that there is this kind of drama, and it is kind of interesting to read at the start. It might stop being interesting past a point, but right now, I'm here for it. I also really like the relationship between Graystripe and Silverstream. I think that the sass is a lot of fun. When they were drowning, and when she rescued him, and she was like, "What are you doing on River Clan territory?" And Graystripe's like, "I'm drowning. What does it look like I'm doing?" And that conversation was just enjoyable, man. I love reading that kind of stuff. It makes me remember how playful these books are, and it's just fun. I love that, I think that in general, the whole romance things in this books were done better. Especially I feel like might be completely wrong. I remember that eventually Tiger Claw settles down with somebody else. But I feel like there's some sparks between Tiger Claw and Leopard Fur from River Clan. Like the way they were like looking at each other during those battles, and there's some kind of chemistry going on. I feel that. But on to the next thing. I think that this book is also just far better done than I remembered it being. There are some really pretty phrases like impatience fluttered in his chest like a trapped bird. I could never write that. I couldn't. The best thing that I can write would be like a pool analogy about pool, the game billiards. I love the way that they talk about the highway area that Wind Clan settles in, and the stinking crow food. And I think that the way that they mentioned the red sky as this portent of death was a cool detail, because they also mentioned that they could smell rain. And there's a saying, at least in the sailing community, it's like red sky at morning, sailor's warning, red sky at night, sailor's delight. And so there's this red sky and they're taking warning, and they talk about how they can smell rain. And it's like, oh yeah, because when there's the red sky, that means that there's something to do with the atmosphere and how the wind is blowing in. Obviously it's going to rain. There's also an explanation when Fireheart is showing Cinderpaw around, who's like, this is why you look for owls, because, on a night we would be able to see where the prey is because of where the owls are hunting. Like, that's a cool detail. That's cool. And Fireheart identifying that willow trees only grow in certain climates, and therefore, Graystripe has to be near this thing because he has this willow sapling on his fur. Like, that's smart as well. I don't know. There's just a lot of cool details, and I really appreciate, like, the work that this book puts in to make it feel like this is really stuff that's happening in a forest to kitty cats. The kittiest cats. This book also makes absolutely no efforts to conceal the fact that they are cats. They use the word meowing quite a lot, which I enjoy. Like, they're grieving and regretting their mistakes and fighting in pointless wars and battles, but they are always going to be little bitty kitty cats. Yes, they are. It's just fun. And later on, Graystripe chases down this leaf in front of his apprentice for the sheer fun of it. And it's like, yeah, these are kitties. I can see kitties acting like this. But yeah, those are the things that I enjoyed from this book. Now let's talk about the further ramifications of this book and the violations of the Warrior Code. Alright, so the first thing I want to say is that Wind Clan is back, baby! That's right, Wind Clan has returned to the forest. Our dear, sweet, beautiful, beloved Wind Clan are finally here. We can see them again. These cats, they run so fast, they catch their rabbits. I love them. I love these guys. And Tallstar is definitely an ally, which will be a good thing because it looks a lot like Shadow Clan and River Clan might team up in the future to try and fight Thunder Clan. And we could use all the allies we can get. Also, what's up with Tiger Claw and Leopard Fur? Those guys are up to something. Tiger Claw is like really dangerous. We knew that. But like, I'm talking about the chemistry here. I'm talking about, actually, this book had a lot of chemistry. There was Tiger Claw and Leopard Fur. There was Fireheart and Sandstorm. There was Graystripe and Silverstream. Like, this book was Chemistry City. Just kidding. It's not Chemistry City. I think it's like outside of the New Forest or something like that. It's closest to Bournemouth and Poole, really. But yeah, that was, I think, the major takeaway. There are cats, and these cats are gonna fall in love and probably kill each other a whole bunch. It's gonna be great. I can't wait for it. As for the Warriors Code's violations, there was definitely a lot of them in this book. Graystripe and Fireheart passing into River Clan territory just to take a shorter route home is trespassing, and Graystripe continues to do it throughout the book to be with Silverstream, which is stupid because he could just go to Fourtrees. And like, yeah, later on they go to Fourtrees, but you should have been doing that in the first place because now River Clan thinks you're dangerous, you idiot, you fool. Blue Star also violates the Warrior Code by making apprentices out of kits that aren't even 6 months old yet, which it's definitely not the major contributing factor to the fact that Cinderpaw gets crippled, but I would say that it is irresponsible of her. to do that, because again, it is against the warrior code. She does say, oh, they're almost 6 moons, and then she goes and makes them apprentices on the same night. And it's like, I'm sorry, did you think that now tonight is our 6-month anniversary? So that's just cool. Whatever. Sandpaw and Fireheart break the code by eating when they're out on patrol, even before any of the other clan cats are fed. Though apparently this is a gray area. I don't remember if they were on border patrol or hunting patrol, and if that means that like the cats on the border patrol can eat. But Sandpaw did be like, hey, this is cool. We don't have to eat. We don't have to save our food for the clan because we're out on patrol. And Fireheart just agreed with her, and I was like, something's up with that. I should note that down. And so I did. Cloudkit hunts before becoming an apprentice, which is illegal. There is a rule about that in the warrior code that no cats can catch their own prey until they are 6 months old, which seems like a weird rule to have, if I'm being honest, because I don't know, the kits in this book by and large are pretty incompetent, and the fact that Cloudkit does actually manage to capture a prey is pretty impressive, I guess. But like, come on, kid, follow the rules, follow the law. Fireheart breaks the warrior code by being more loyal to Graystripe and letting he lets Silverstream go, which is also illegal technically, but like, who's gonna fault him for that? He loves his best friend. He loves him so much. They're boys. They're lads, and you can't. Friends don't kill other friends' girlfriends. I would say that's definitely a big rule in my social circle. And those are, I think, most of I think that's it for warrior code violations. There are other things to talk about in ramifications. Like, I feel like Cinderpaw is going to be the medicine cat apprentice, but like, we all saw that coming. She's basically a walking plot contrivance, which I feel bad about, but like, that's kind of who she is. And yeah, there's that. There are a lot of other things to talk about as well, but I don't want to talk about them because if you'll forgive me for a second, I'm going to talk about my own life on this podcast. I regret to inform you guys that this will be probably the last podcast in a little while in which I will have my beard. I know that it was everybody's favorite part of this podcast, knowing subconsciously that the person who was talking had a beard. And I'm sorry to say that I am going to shave it once I'm done recording this. I might wait a few days before doing it, but definitely by the next time that I do this podcast, I will not have a beard. So if you're sad about that, I'm sorry. I promise I'll grow it back if I want to. And if maybe there's enough demand for it, I'll happily grow it back, because I know that everybody who's listening to this podcast is so hungry to hear more of this sweet beard action. But just as a parting gift for my beard, I am going to scratch it right next to the microphone so that we can have that fun experience. If you want, I can also like clink on my water bottle a little bit. Like I know that that's a fun sound for people to listen to for some reason. I don't have nails, unfortunately, but I can arrange that next time if we want this to be an ASMR podcast as well. On the side of also being a Warrior Cats retrospective podcast. Also, I want to talk about the format a little bit. I am pretty happy with the way that this podcast works for the time being. I think being just over half an hour is pretty good for us. However, in the future, when we start having guests on, it's probably going to become a little bit longer, just for the sake of having more fun conversations with the guests and being less about the books and more about them. If the books start becoming more episodic, not much might have to change. But right now, as they stand, where they are all telling like a complete story and there's a lot happening in each of them, it feels prudent to say that the time might extend. I don't think I'm gonna try to like make it an hour long, but it could very well be an hour long. At least 45 minutes, I would say. So yeah, that's where we're at right now. I hope that you have a wonderful, beautiful day, and I would like you to know that I care about you very deeply. I'll catch you later, and now, as promised, here is the beard scratching right before the outro theme. Alright, I don't know if I did that right, but whatever, suck it up.